Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I am one of your co hosts. I am Dr. Joe Hamlett. Alongside me is Dr. Dave Peltz. How are you doing today, sir?
I am super excited. I don't know why, just a good day.
Absolutely. I'm again, this is our favorite day of the week. We get to do our podcast, so excited about that. With that, we want to welcome all of our viewers, audience, listeners. For those of you this is your first time, welcome to the first time, and hopefully you enjoy this. And to those who've been coming back and been an audience part of the audience for a while, we appreciate it. But this is the personal, professional, and career development podcast. Again, we want to assist you in your journey as well as me and Dave going along our journey. We want to help you, possibly help you not take the long scenic route like we've done in our
Mhm.
journey. So, with all that said, in our normal fashion, one of us will introduce the topic and then the other will get us going. And so today I have the luxury of introducing the topic. And so, with that, the topic today is finding your community. So, Dave, when I bring up finding your community, what does that mean to you? How do you get us started today?
I'm glad we have this topic for this week. Finding your community. So, you know, you and I grew up with challenging childhoods, and we were not, we didn't have the best of conditions,
Right.
sometimes, and humble beginnings. And so I think the first community I really found was art. And that wasn't until my junior year in high school. So I'm going way back in time. I think
Right.
right
Right.
around the time you know, country music was invented. I don't know. I'm not that old.
Right.
But that was my first sense of community because I can be and I am a very creative person, and I enjoyed art. And I will go back a couple years before that. I took my first art class, probably I think it was in seventh or eighth grade, and
Right.
my teacher told me, "You are never going to be an artist. This is garbage." Blah 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 blah. And
Wow.
so I was like, "Wow, well that's that." Well, my junior year in high school, I um, went into mechanical drawing, which is kind of like a precursor or requirement for doing architectural drawings back in the day before we
Right.
had CAD and stuff like that. And I did well in that, and I took a drawing class, and I did really well in that. So that became my first real community where other kids that were into art or finding themselves through art, and it was kind of like my safe place, And
Okay.
then my next uh, probably more adult experience was the military, because there's
Okay.
a very strong sense of community in the military, regardless of the branch. And if and when you're in the military, you tend to you know you know throw some shade on some of the other branches that they're not your branch, and then but when you get out, veterans are then a community. So
Absolutely. Yep.
and those lines are not blurred; they're actually dissolved, and it's just veterans are a community in themselves. So those were my two experiences with community, my first two experiences with community. And I found it very important because community, like family, has its ups and downs.
Right.
It's you're going to have your frictions and points of friction, and times where things are great and times when you're just like wanting to slap each other around a little bit and say, "Hey, wake up!" This is not how you
Right.
do it.
Right.
You got to do it this way. And so I think it's important when we talk about finding community to understand what your community is to you. And you can have more than one community. I mean,
Right.
for
Yep.
me and for us, I believe this podcast is a community. We've got many followers and listeners, and people who guest speakers and stuff like that, and it's part of a growing community that we have. And I love this community. It's a new community, and it's one that you and I both thrive in, and I love that piece of it. So we talk about finding your community. It's really important to understand and understand yourself, and then understand where you fit in or want to fit in,
Right.
and who's going to provide that support in the ups and downs. So I'm going to pause because I think I've been talking for about 45 minutes now.
No, no, Dave. I didn't even think about going back to kind of the origins of our first communities
Mhm,
because my first community I had a love for basketball,
mhm,
and so my community became those, my teammates or friends that I played with, as far as the community, because again, there were ups and downs,
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever said this before, but even, when I really got into basketball as a young kid, and I thought I was going to be the next Dr. J. Again, I'm dating myself, but I shared that with my dad, that that's what I wanted to do. And that's when, I got the reality, kind of like what you said with the teachers saying that you're never, your art's not going to amount to anything. That's actually the reality check that my dad passed on to me, was that I wasn't ever going to be a NBA player, or I wasn't going to be that good. And that really affected me, um, in those early years, thinking again I was going to be this person. And me and the wife were just talking about this the other day. The idea that some parents, do that to their kids, that they take their dreams away, and without even batting an eye, not really understanding the impact of that. And maybe that's what happened to him. But that's where my community started, and unfortunately, it got cut short at that time. But then I was able to get back into that community because I did love basketball,
Yeah.
so much. But I had missed some of those opportunities to maybe advance, go to college, and things like that. But I re-engaged with that community throughout, my adult life, even just recent years, where now I can't play as much. But that was a strong, very strong community, because I could be who I wanted to be. I could pretend that I was still Dr. J, or Michael Jordan, or whoever the players coming up at that time. So
Mhm.
that was my first community as well. And then, like you say, going into the military, that immediately becomes a community.
Mhm.
And even like you just said, I was just out and about this past week, and there was a couple of veterans. Like you said, one was, same branch as me. He's, we thanked each other for our service. And then there was another gentleman, another branch of service, and came up and, gave a fist bump. But you're right; those lines have dissolved, because we are now in a much larger community. So that's very cool to know that we have that. But now thinking about, like you say, in this space, what we do today, and like you said, we this kind of established a new community. Maybe, like you said, we can have multiple communities, but this is one that me and Dave are trying to grow. We're trying to continue to invite more people into. And so I'm grateful and thankful that we have a place like this that we can communicate, and then maybe other people can get in here. We've had more guests, continue to build our community, like Dave said. So this has been a great experience, and we're excited to where it's going to go.
Mhm.
But the idea of the community is having people that you can communicate with, that you can rely on. Sometimes maybe there's bad times, hard times. Reach out to that community and be able to maybe get uplifted for a period of time, that may help you get over a hard time, or maybe help you deal with some issues. So I think
Mhm.
that's why it's important to find your community, and everything you do, even if it's a community at work, your immediate work team, or the larger team that you're part of. Just finding a community where you can be who you want, be who you are, be who you want to be. I
Mhm.
think that's important as well, because we all are part of communities too, that we may not be able to be completely ourselves. So
Right.
so having a community where you can be who you truly are is very important. So I'll stop there too. I know I kind of
Oh,
regurgitated some of the things you said, but I think it's important for people to recognize those communities that you're part of, that you may
Mhm.
not even have considered.
Yeah, yeah. And and to break it down and start digging a little bit deeper and aligning it with the premise of the podcast, your one of your communities is your family, whatever that family
Right.
looks
Yep.
like. It doesn't have to be blood, it could just be, it's not even blood relations, it's just those people in your personal life that you go to, that you support, that support you, that
Right.
celebrate with you, that are there to back you, and and at the at a text or a phone call or whatever, you're there or they're there for you.
Right.
And then on the professional side, as you mentioned, at work, what's your community within your work environment or your workplace? Do you have a community? Have you found a community there yet? It could be an employee a resource or support group. It could be, a group of colleagues that are out to do something better for the company in their own time, a community of practice. And then, on the career development side, what's your community for how you evolve as a professional and
Right.
develop your
Yep.
own career? Do you have coaches and mentors and people that are there to cheerlead for you and to promote you and market you for your abilities? So there are three different distinct different types of communities out there. And then going back to what you said, and what I'd mentioned, about our younger days, those communities where you get into athletics or sports or entertainment or the arts or hiking or fitness or whatever. I mean, those are other communities as well. And a community doesn't have to have a bazillion people. It can have one number short of a bazillion, or maybe it's just you
Right.
and one or two other people. But that's a community that's created, and it's created for a certain reason. And I think that's important to understand, is that when you become part of a community, become part of a community that has a purpose and a direction, not just a not just a group of people that are there to bitch and complain. It's like, what is the purpose and what is the direction of this community? Is it doing is it a positive community? Because there are
Right.
very
Yep.
negative communities out there that the premise and the direction is just to be negative and to fight and to create consternation, because that's what they enjoy. That's not a
Right.
positive community. You want to be involved in a positive supporting community, not one that's there to degrade or berate or belittle or be aggressive towards other people or other groups and communities.
Right. I mean, you're right. Those exist as well, but hopefully, if you're in the mindset of growing, developing, that you are looking for a community that, like you said, is going to help you, assist you, and again, some of the other things that a community might do is help you see yourself, because a lot of times we can't see us, but they
Mhm.
can see who you are. They know your tendencies. They know those things about you, and again, sometimes they may be able to call you out on things
Yeah.
that you think you're doing well.
Hmm.
So having that supportive community that can back you positively, and again help you maybe identify some of those weaknesses or opportunities that you have. So having that support team, because we've said it many times on here before, you it's hard to do these things alone, especially
Hmm.
when you're trying to develop, get to, achieve your goals, to reach certain levels of success. Yeah, you're probably going to do the bulk of the work, but having even people just to maybe bounce ideas off of, or again, a group of people or a community that you can call, even if it's one on one, and call all your community on an individual basis, but having that ability to do that, reach out to them and say, hey, what are your thoughts about this? These are things I'm kind of thinking. What do you think? Just having someone again that may, again, maybe help realign or help you over, tough spot. You're hung up on something, but just having people that you can reach out to that again have your best interest at heart and want to help you succeed. I think
Hmm.
that's the most important thing about having that community. Or again, just to be there if you need somebody as a sounding board, someone that you may have be going through a tough time, and maybe all that you have to do is listen. It
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give them advice or to respond any type of way. Just listening, just allowing them to get things off their chest. Maybe something is going on at work that they can't talk to their work community, but
Hmm.
the outside of that, they can come to their maybe personal community where they can start to unpeel some of those things that they're challenged or faced with. So,
Yeah, and I think I know we've talked about this before about don't do it alone. And I think we've even argued that
right,
rationally and objectively, you never you aren't able to do it alone,
right,
because
yeah,
if you're providing a service or a product and no one is buying into it or purchasing it or evaluating it, then you really, what do you really have? If you're wanting to do something or go someplace, it's because someone or many other one person or more than one people have been involved in the process, either buying, marketing, sharing, building. You know, If you want to go to from New York to Los Angeles, unless you walk, someone's helping you along the way,
Right.
right? There is your transportation, and whether it's a vehicle, a car, train, bus, aircraft, or whatever, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people involved in that process.
Right.
So when we talk about, well, I just want to do it myself, I want to be self-made, that's fine. But you have to understand and accept that you're not going to be doing it alone. You have to understand that other people are going to be involved to assist you to get there, because you can have the most beautiful paintings in the world, and if no one is seeing them and appreciating them except for yourself, you may have created beautiful art, but what extent? I mean, what is the purpose behind that? If it's for yourself, then that's great, but you're still not doing it alone unless you're making the
Right.
frames and making the paint brushes and the paint and the thinners and the oils and stuff like that. You have help.
Right.
So understanding that you're never alone, which is something that the military uh, preaches to the veterans because of the high suicide rate of veterans. You're never alone, and people have to understand that you're never alone. You just that's and that's what we're talking about. Finding your community. Is it a veteran community? Is it a substance abuse community? Is it a divorce community? Is it a arts and crafts community? Is it a religious community? I mean, athletes, entertainers, music. What is it that your community that is your community, and how are you communicating with them and being a part of that community? And are you contributing and not just being one of those people that are just takers? What are you doing to give back to the community that you're involved
So Dave, we've talked a lot about, the need for a community or the purpose of a community, but I don't think we talked about, how you decide
in?
on joining a community or what type of community you should join.
Hmm.
And I think that goes back to that critical self-reflection, which again we talk about all the time, and really understanding what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Right. You touched on a couple of different communities, like a substance abuse community or a veteran community. So I think it still goes back to what are you trying to achieve? So
Hmm.
what is your goal? So which community would I join? And so in my case, I want to continue to develop and grow. Then maybe I find a community with like-minded professionals. I know we talked about this probably on early episodes about networking, things like
Hmm.
that. So we use LinkedIn as one example. But that's how we might find like-minded professionals, people that are in the space to develop, to grow, maybe to get new jobs and things like that. So that might be an option if again I'm trying to develop myself. But if I have other more specific, needs or concerns, then I may have to reach out to a larger community. And it is still about building relationships with people, finding out how they, which community they fall into, because you may have people that may be in several of your communities. They may be a veteran, they may be an educator, and so you may have more than one thing in common. So you might, align with several communities out there. But I think it's also important just to help people understand, that you may be looking for one thing and end up in a different community, and it may help you, but it still may not help you to the level you need it to or where you need to go. So understanding which community you need, and you may not know that at the beginning, but really doing that critical self-reflection, kind of figuring out where am I trying to go. So what assistance do I need? What type of resources do I need? It could be a support group. It could be, again, just a group of professionals that are trying to get to the next level. So do kind of understanding where you're trying to go will be helpful when you're again trying to figure out what type of community I should try and find. Again, because we can think, oh, there's a group of people over there, I'll jump in this group and this will be my community. Well, this community might be, headed in one direction and it may not be the direction that you need. So just
Hmm.
understanding, that you also have to kind of align with what do I need right now? What community am I searching for? So I think that's important as well for people when they're looking for, communities to understand kind of which community I'm looking for, because there's a ton of communities out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you were saying about finding a community that works for you, that that aligns with your purpose and direction. And um, and I'm going to speak for both of us, try to find communities that will provide support for you, but that also maybe the same or different community that where you can provide support for others,
Right.
because it's really about developing yourself and developing others. This is
Right.
what the podcast is about. And it really comes down to, like you said, the critical self-reflection, understanding what you need and understanding what you can provide, because this is, to your point, very much about relationship building. And you might enter a
Right.
community to find out that you don't want to be in that community.
Right.
Maybe it's a football community, you want to be in a baseball community.
Right.
Or maybe it's the wrong team of that community, or the
Right.
wrong, maybe they're just all about tailgate parties and you're all about watching the game or something like that, or
Right.
the stats and stuff. So finding the right fit is very important. Don't We'd encourage you, don't jump into a community just for the sake of being in a community. Find the one that's going to fit. It's kind of like the shoes you wear. Sure, you can put on any shoe. Some are more comfortable than others. Some are too big, some
Right.
are too small, but you want that Goldilocks, that sweet spot it's just right. So um yeah, just find and don't be afraid to walk away from a community that's not a good fit,
Absolutely. Again,
because
we
you have
we
no
talk about
obligation.
right. We talk about this all the time. Again, you may join a community for a short period of time. You may, get through what you joined the community for originally and walk away with that piece of information or that resource that you needed. And then you join a different community because like we talked about here, even me and Dave, providing you with a blueprint of how we got to where we are today is not necessarily going to help you throughout your entire journey, but maybe bits and pieces of it might. So that's the
Mhm.
same with the community. They may give you the bits and pieces that you need to get you to that next level or to success, that you're trying to achieve. And that's why, again, it's important to have multiple communities, as many communities as you need. It's very similar to what we talked about, in previous episodes when we talked about your personal board of directors, having mentors, coaches, people you can reach out to for different reasons. It's
Mhm.
no different than a community. I mean, what do you need out of that community at that time? But like Dave said, it's not just about, okay, I'm going to join this community, get this, and take off. How can you share, in that community? It's not just a one-way street, but it's again that reciprocating relationship that you're forming, that you're not just going to go in there and get what you need and walk away. It's all about that again. The community, that's what community is. It's give and take. It's helping one another. It's, watching everyone succeed as much as they can, versus it's all about me. I'm going to get my thing and then you get yours however you get it. It's still about taking care of other people as well. As you're growing, as you're developing, how many other people can you positively impact with your experiences?
Mhm.
So that's what the finding that community, the community that fits. And again, you may keep trying on different communities that
Mhm.
don't work and don't align, but that's the beauty of it. It still comes down to where you're trying to go and what tools, what resources do you need to get you where you need to go. So
Yeah.
that's still a number one priority is to figure out how those things impact you, what makes
Mhm.
you better, how you're going to get where you need to go. So
Yeah, and I like where you went with this about really emphasizing the helping others, because that is a big piece of community. The more you give, the more you learn and develop yourself as part
right,
of that community, because you know everybody needs something, some sort of help and support at different times in their lives. I'm not saying you need something, you may not need something right now, but in the
right,
future you might,
yeah,
or in the past you might have. So share those experiences. Don't hoard them to yourselves. Share them. Share that experience. Like Joe and I say so many times, when Joe said earlier, you can take the long scenic route and learn how to build a wheel from scratch, but why do it when there's billions of wheels out there that can work?
right, yeah,
So, I mean, there are benefits to taking the long scenic route. But it's not without its pains, that's for sure. I mean, so take the use the lessons learned from others to really build up yourself and to help accelerate your growth, instead of starting from scratch and trying to do something completely different, only to wind up in the exact same place you are, but now you've lost that time that you've put into it.
I think you brought up a very important point about the whole idea of taking, you know, taking what you need from people's experiences. When they share something with you, no different than you trying to raise a child and you keep telling them if you stick your hand on the in the socket or stick a fork in the socket, you're going to get shocked. I mean,
Yeah,
do
it took
do
me a
you
long
really
time to
have
learn
to
that
experience?
lesson.
So maybe don't do like Dave, but the idea is hopefully that the knowledge that's being shared with you, the experiences that people are sharing with you, that you can take, those parts that apply to you and say, okay, that makes sense. Don't be like Dave, where they kept showing you the chart, they show the spark, they show you the fire, and Dave still sticks it in there. Yeah, don't be like Dave, but if you had to experience that way, that's the way you grow. uh, okay, but for the most part, hopefully you can take those experiences, those other things that are being shared with you, and apply what works for you, and continue to move forward. Again, that's what this is all about: taking those bits and pieces that fit your outline, your align with where you're trying to go, and apply those things. And we say that all the time on this podcast. I mean, we dropped a bunch of topics on out there, and maybe only one word or one sentence out of each podcast may mean something to you, or only out of one podcast, and that may be the only thing that you needed. That's fine. That's what this is all about. The more information you take in, the more you learn about things. It's still all about how you align it to what you're trying to achieve. It's not about, okay, you got to do this exactly. Here's the perfect formula. No, it's not that, because even if it is the so-called perfect formula, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you the same way. So just understanding that, take what you need, again, even from communities, get what you can out of it, as far as, again, still that relationship, it's a give and take, but take what you can, even if it, like you say, if you've outgrown that community and it's time to move on, that's acceptable as well. So I just wanted to again reiterate that, the importance of getting what you need out of it, and then again applying it or moving on if you need to.
Yeah, it looks like we're down to about time here, Joe. So I'm just gonna throw in my final thoughts and
Okay.
we'll go from there. So yeah, so finding a community and being part of a community, an active part of that community where you're getting what you need and finding what you need and contributing and giving back
Right.
is really what finding community is about. Finding your community is all about. It's to Joe's point, it's a give and take relationship. It's not an all take or an all give. There's got to be some reciprocity. It's got to be reciprocal, and to make sure that that circle is fulfilled so it doesn't become a negative spiral, if you will. So well, I'm just going to say, encourage all of our viewers and listeners, new and existing, to find your community and be deliberate about your community and be aware of your communities that you have and that you participate in or that you don't participate in or that you maybe need to participate a little bit more in or a little bit less in my case sometimes. So
Right.
yeah, I'm good there. So
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Dr. Dave. And yeah, I won't add too much, except for the fact that, again, we've touched on it several times. It's the idea that you're doing it alone. You don't have to, or you don't even think you're doing it, have to think you're doing it alone. There are communities, or if there's not an existing community for what you need, maybe you can create it yourself.
absolutely.
Again, like Dave said, sometimes it only takes one other person to start that community. I mean, me and Dave right now on our started our community with just me and him. I know he started by himself because he talked to himself a lot before, but until now it's three of us because he still talks to himself, but he talks to me. So, but yeah,
Thank you,
in all
brother. Thanks.
seriousness, in all seriousness, it being part of a community can have great gains and benefits to help you get where you need to go. So I'll end it with that. But we want to thank you all for tuning in to this podcast. Again, we enjoy doing this. We want to continue to do it, and we'll see new, bigger, better things in the future. But we're excited about being here. And again, if you need anything from us, please feel free to reach out. You can have all our contact information in the description. So, with that, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.